Obviously, I think one of the biggest things we heard this week, Jimmy G, my Jimmy Garoppolo, failed his physical. But I think the interesting part about this is the Raiders' deal with Jimmy includes an injury waiver that was put in there to protect the team in case something goes wrong with his left foot. Brady, what do you think of this situation and particularly the waiver?
Yeah, so it's come out now where it's that's a nice little video there. It's come out now that it's his Liz Frank. That's what they believe the area of the injury, what's being affected by this. He's got surgery. To what degree? I don't necessarily know that, but I've had the surgery. I went about it trying to heal it and rehab it the natural way, which is a huge mistake. And that actually may lead to the question of why didn't he get it fixed earlier in this process? And that might have been why. They might have got a medical opinion that said you can cast it, put it in a walking boot, you'll be on some crutches for a period of time, and you should be able to come back from it. The problem is a lot of times it doesn't heal properly, especially when you talk about bones, little small bones like metatarsals in your midfoot. And so what they end up doing is they'll go in and they'll fuse those little itty bitty bones and joints in your midfoot. They'll fuse it all together. They'll make it one big hard mass that doesn't move anymore. That helps with taking away some of the pain. It does take away mobility, so you can't really run and it doesn't quite feel the same. But that is most likely what he's rehabbing from and working through now. Now, as far as the waiver goes, this is not uncommon to a lot of other players that find themselves in this position, especially him, someone who's battled through a bunch of injuries in his past. It's probably held him back from being the quarterback he'd hoped he would be, but also moving forward in the future. You signed this guy to what was a big signing bonus. Now that's gone. They rolled that into the base salary. Now that salary is not going to be there if he re-injures this foot. So teams do this all the time. Like I remember taking the last contract I ever took when I signed with the Dolphins in training camp in 2014. I had to take a waiver out on my back. And it basically stated that if I injured my back, I wouldn't get paid. I had to get surgery by their team doctors, physicians. They save money that way. And then rehab with their rehab physicians as well. And if I had any injury as a result from that back, so if they could attribute whatever injury I was dealing with, and it was a result of my back injury, they would also subsequently not pay me. So that's how waivers work. It's a really, really tough business for football players, especially as you accumulate more injuries. Most teams through physicals find these things and they'll try to negotiate in and take out waivers on anything and everything they can. So it's a tough spot for Jimmy Garoppolo, but it does leave a lot of questions about what this means for the Raiders moving forward and the time frame for him coming back. Because I'll tell you this much, my foot did not feel normal. Granted, I got metal put in, two like metal kind of staple looking things put in. I didn't feel normal for like a year. So I can only imagine the time frame he's on right now trying to get ready for week 1 of the NFL season.
I think that if you polled the most like average people in America, regardless of whether or not they are football fans, and said, what's a more devastating injury, a ACL or a Liz Frank? I think a huge percentage of them would say ACL. And I think all of those people would be wrong, that they Liz Frank, for especially for these purposes, as a quarterback, with how much you have to use your foot, how much you have to, in terms of your mechanics, and whether it's your driving foot or your planting foot. Those are the technical terms. I'm not sure, but close enough. You need to have your feet working, and your feet need to have the proper strength. And the Liz Frank injury is one that I think it kind of flies under the radar for your average football fan when they think about this from a medical perspective. We've seen it where Liz Frank injuries will end your career, like especially for a quarterback, and a quarterback who's older. I think when you played, Brady, obviously you talk about the metal that's put in there. It's clearly the medicinal advances have been improved enough where you can recover from it. But yeah, this is not a surgery that you're going to be back for week 1 and feeling normal. I think that and I know there's some reporters, I've seen some people out there like doing the analysis saying, it's not a big deal that they had this clause put in, that they, they just want to keep it even, keep it safe, and just make sure that the team isn't harmed. But the reality is, Tom Brady the specter of Tom Brady is lingering out there as he's trying to buy a minority share in the Raiders. It would be the other NFL owners. I think the majority NFL owners, I believe, would have to
all of them, I believe,
unanimously to allow Tom Brady to be a minority owner of an NFL team and to play for that NFL team, or to play for any NFL team. So it seems likely that that would end up happening, but he hasn't been approved yet, so he can always bail. And I think this Jimmy G thing has a little more legs than maybe people want to give it in certain spots of the interwebs.
I'm
Yeah, a
with
little
you
more
on that.
legs than only 1 foot. The Raiders delayed kind of the press conference and the announcement with Jimmy Garoppolo, and some people didn't think it was a big deal, and now obviously we see that it is. Now, if you're a Raiders fan or even the organization, you gave up on Derek Carr. You let go of Derek Carr, who is a capable, great quarterback, to pick up. And look, I'm a Jimmy Garoppolo fan, an injury-prone quarterback. Now, Dom in the chat says that the 49ers didn't think it was Liz Frank. And then he went to the Raiders and it was a different story. But you get this injury-prone quarterback and then come to find out he's got this serious injury, didn't take care of it in the offseason earlier. And now you might not have a quarterback to start. Like, what are they thinking?
Obviously, they're I don't want to say in panic mode, but this has to be one of the most unsettling things if you're a Raiders fan right now. Looking at your roster, which you may have already had questions about Jimmy Garoppolo in the first place, being the guy, clearly Devontae Adams did with the way he spoke out about it. So there's some concerns, and then throw this on top of it. I mean, just to go back to one of the things that Will touched on, any foot injury, and anyone who's suffered a foot injury that's played in the NFL will tell you, what usually happens is it has a compounding impact, meaning, the way your foot now strikes the ground when you run, when you move is different. And then applying that force moving forward, you end up having hip issues, back issues. Everything is your body's trying to adjust now to a new normal. And that can be really problematic, for a quarterback when you're talking about the transfer of force from your back foot, or your plant leg, as Will so appropriately put it, and transferring to your front foot, especially because it's his left foot and he's a right-handed quarterback. It's hard to then transition all that power, all that force, all that torque onto that foot. It's painful. And you have to go through a period of time where you kind of don't realize you're naturally changing your throwing motion and your mechanics, but you are, because your body naturally tries to adjust to not feel pain. So it's going to take a while for him to be able to get back and feel 100%. I think he's capable of doing it. He's someone who's always played from a pretty wide base with a very, very short stride, or almost a non-existent stride, and being able to use his hips to kind of torque through it. But this kind of at least sends a message to me to be really concerned for a team that I don't care what you saw them do last year with Sean Payton in Denver. The Chargers with what I think could be a season, kind of one of those budding seasons where maybe they surprise everyone. And obviously the Chiefs, the best team in the AFC West. You probably sit there looking at the Raiders as the last place team in this deal, right?
Yeah, by a large margin. I mean, I think the Raiders probably have some futures odds for the Raiders that we could look at in terms of their win totals and, their odds to make the playoffs. I would guess they're probably 6.5 wins, might be off the board, and their odds to win the division probably 7-1, and their odds to make the playoffs maybe, I don't know, 3-1, something like that. I mean, and again, these could be off the board because of the Jimmy G stuff. But the Raiders are by far and away the worst team in this division. And I agree with you completely. I think the Sean Payton factor is huge. You think about, a team. I think I had the Raiders listed as one of the 5 teams I thought could be in for a rough ride in 2023 for a story I wrote last week. And the premise is basically that it's Jimmy G's got this foot thing that's lingering. You've got a team that's in a division that's really, really difficult, where if you finish second in the division, you've done a great job. That means you just did. The Chiefs are the only team that you finished behind, the reigning world champions and probably the best team in the NFL, just because they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The Chargers added Kellen Moore. The Broncos, Sean Payton is a huge, huge upgrade. Like, that team is going to be good as a result of Payton being there. And for all these reasons, I mean, I think the Raiders are in big trouble.